You are standing in the grocery aisle on a Friday night, holding a pack of deli turkey in your hand. You look at the price, then at the cart, then back at the price again. It is not a life-changing amount of money, but your brain is already doing the math. Gas on Monday, rent next week, the credit card payment that clears before your next paycheck. So you put the turkey back. No one around you notices. The cashier will never know. But in that small moment, you just made a financial decision your brain has been preparing for days. And that is how millions of people in America live. Not at the edge of society, right in the middle of it. Warehouse workers, teachers, office assistants, nurses, delivery drivers, people who get up every morning, go to work, pay their bills, and still reach the end of the month with almost nothing left. The problem is not always that they are careless with money. A lot of the time, the problem is that there is no margin, no cushion, no room for one thing to go wrong. Between payday and rent day, every dollar already has a job before it even arrives. The paycheck hits the account, and for a few hours, it looks like money. Then rent, utilities, insurance, groceries, gas, subscriptions, and debt payments begin to pull it apart. This is where the first invisible line appears. Below a certain amount of cash, life is not just expensive, it becomes mentally crowded. Start near zero, or more realistically, start with a checking account that has less than $1,000 in it after rent clears. You are not thinking about wealth, you are thinking about timing. Can the electric bill wait until Friday? Can you stretch the gas tank 2 more days? Can the dentist wait until next month? Can you buy the cheaper groceries without making dinner feel depressing? This is what economists sometimes call scarcity. When money is tight, your brain does not simply think harder. It has less room to think about anything else. Every normal decision becomes a small calculation, and those calculations stack up. You are not less intelligent. You are busy surviving the week. Then, 1 month, you finally get a little ahead. Maybe your tax refund comes in. Maybe you pick up extra shifts. Maybe you stop eating out for a while. Somehow, the savings account reaches $3,000. And for the first time in a long time, the number feels real. But $3,000 is a strange kind of safety. It can survive a quiet month. It cannot survive life. A car repair, a medical bill, and 1 missed week of work can wipe it out. And when that happens, it feels worse than before, because now you know exactly how long it took to build that money. You open the banking app, and the number tells you a story you do not want to hear. You are not broke because nothing came in. You are broke because one unexpected event was enough to erase the progress. At $5,000, something changes. Not everything, but enough. A broken appliance no longer feels like a personal emergency. A car problem is still annoying, but it does not immediately become a crisis. You can look at a bill and think for a moment before panic takes over. That is the first real function of cash. It does not make you rich. It gives your brain a little oxygen. But financially, $5,000 still does not do much by itself. Even in a decent high-yield savings account, the interest is not going to change your life. The money is working, technically, but it is whispering. The bigger change is psychological. Between $5,000 and $10,000, you start to see yourself differently. You are no longer just someone trying not to fall behind. You become someone who can actually build something. That identity shift matters more than people think. One afternoon, you stop at a coffee shop out of habit. You look at the menu, then think about the savings number you have been protecting. You still could buy the drink. That is not the point. The difference is that for once, the question is not, can I afford this? The question becomes, do I want this more than I want to keep moving? That is a different kind of decision, not fear, direction. Then comes the hardest stretch, $10,000 to $20,000. This is where many people slip because the danger no longer feels like danger. You have enough money to feel safe, and that safety makes spending feel reasonable again. A better phone does not seem irresponsible. A vacation feels overdue. A new couch feels like a normal adult purchase. None of these things is automatically wrong. The problem is timing. Right when you are close to crossing the most important threshold, The world starts offering you very normal reasons to step backward. And then one day, the account says $20,000. This is where the game changes. Not because $20,000 makes you rich. It does not. It changes the game because it buys time. Depending on where you live, $20,000 might cover a few months of basic expenses. In some cities, less. In others, more. But even a few months can change the way you move through life. Imagine getting called into a meeting and realizing your job might be gone. Without savings, the next decision is made by fear. You apply to anything. You accept the first offer that keeps rent paid. You negotiate from panic because the calendar is stronger than you are. With $20,000 behind you, the same meeting feels different. It is still scary, but when you get home, you do not immediately open 3 credit card tabs and start calculating how long you can float groceries. You make dinner, open your laptop, and look at the job market like a person who has time to choose. That is what the money bought, not luxury, time. And time changes your position. You talk differently in a salary negotiation when you know you are not one missed paycheck away from disaster. You handle a credit application differently when your savings account is not empty. Even your posture changes in conversations where money used to make you feel small. There is also the quieter effect. A medical appointment stops feeling like a financial trap. A car noise becomes something to fix, not something to ignore. A surprise bill still hurts, but it no longer decides the next 3 months of your life. This is the part people underestimate. A cash cushion does not only live in your bank account, it spreads into your sleep, your patience, your decisions, and the way you react when something breaks. At $20,000, another door begins to open. Real investing. Not gambling on a stock because someone at work said it doubled. Not chasing a crypto coin because the chart looks exciting. Real investing means boring, automatic, long-term ownership, broad index funds, retirement accounts, regular contributions, and time. But investing only works if you do not have to pull the money out the first time life sends you a bill. That is why the cash buffer matters first. If you invest every spare dollar while your emergency fund is empty, you may be forced to sell at the worst possible moment. The market does not care that your transmission failed or that your landlord raised rent. A buffer gives your investments the one thing they need most: time to stay invested. And once that happens, money stops growing only through effort. It begins to grow through compounding. A dollar saved is no longer just a dollar you did not spend. It becomes a dollar that can earn, then keep earning, while you keep adding more. This is where behavior changes again. You stop spending just to feel better for an hour, not because you suddenly become a different person, but because the account balance has started to mean something. A delivery order, another subscription, a random online purchase. Each one has to compete with the feeling of watching your future become less fragile. That is intentional spending, and intentional spending is different from simply earning more. Plenty of people earn decent money and still build no wealth because every raise becomes a bigger lifestyle. The number on the paycheck rises, but the gap between income and expenses never opens. Wealth begins in that gap. So how do you get there? The first step is not an investment app. It is clarity. For a few days, write down where the money actually goes, not what you think you spend, what leaves the account, the small grocery add-ons, the extra takeout, the subscriptions you stop noticing, the convenience purchases that feel harmless in the moment. Most people do not need shame at this stage. They need visibility. The second step is automation. When the paycheck comes in, a fixed amount moves out before the rest of life can claim it. Ideally, it goes to a separate savings account, somewhere you do not stare at it every time you buy groceries. Out of sight is not a trick. It is protection from yourself on tired days. The third step is income. Cutting expenses matters, but it has a floor. You can only cut so much before life becomes miserable. Income has more room. A raise conversation, over time, a certification, a side job, a better role, a skill that makes your next job pay more. The road from $0 to $20,000 is usually the hardest part. At first, it feels slow. $200 a month becomes $2,400 after a year, and that number may feel disappointing. But that early stage is where most people quit, because the progress is real before it feels impressive. Then one day, the number stops looking symbolic. It becomes protection. America talks about success constantly, but people rarely talk honestly about cash. They talk about salaries, houses, cars, vacations, and investments. But the quiet foundation under all of it is much less glamorous. It is the money that keeps a bad week from becoming a financial collapse. $20,000 is not the finish line. It is the point where the floor beneath you starts to feel solid again. Not all at once, not through one dramatic move, but paycheck by paycheck, transfer by transfer, until the next time you stand in a grocery aisle and look at the price of something small, your brain is no longer calculating whether one ordinary purchase will break the week. That is when money starts to feel different. Not because you can buy everything, but because life has finally stopped making every small decision feel dangerous.